Good day, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome. It's good to see so many of you, familiar faces and names on the screen. Thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar, the topic, Coaching in Business. It will be presented by Peter de Villiers. Just a few admin arrangements like always. Your microphone is currently on mute. It will remain like that for the duration of the webinar, just so that we don't have any interruptions. Towards the end of the webinar, I will enable the setting for you to unmute yourself, and you're welcome then to ask questions. We will then allow you to ask, and Peter will answer. In the meantime, if there's a burning question or you want to make a comment, you're welcome to make use of the chat functionality in the Zoom application. I'll answer the questions. I will also collate some of the questions and then present to Peter at the end of the webinar. We will record today's webinar, and the recording link will be sent to everyone after the webinar later today or tomorrow morning. You're welcome, obviously, to share this link with other people. Now, to most of you, Peter is well known. Those that are new and joining for the first time, Peter is the author and functional developer of the Shadow Match system, and he still today holds the role as Head of Research and Development at Shadow Match. Ladies and gentlemen, I think without any further ado, let's hand to Peter and let's start with our webinar. Thank you very much, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you, Lisette. Am I clear, loud and clear in terms of the sound? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. The topic for today is coaching in business. Obviously, coaching is a very rich word. It's been used over the years as a word that was actually used in the world of sports, but it changed. Words, the meaning of words change over time. It's called the history of word development. There are fancy academic words as well to describe this subject, but words change in meaning. And currently the word coach has got a very rich meaning. And I'm also working on a research paper to document the different words that we use in helping people. Today we'll be coaching in business. And obviously, we have life coaching, business coaching, leadership coaching, performance management and performance optimization coaching, study method coaching, and there's a list. What Shadow Match provides, obviously, is career coaching. There are different levels of career coaching. For instance, somebody who would like to progress with their career in a specific job and a specific company without trying to find something different. That is what we call in-career or in-job coaching, so that the individual maximizes the success that they have in the workplace, and in doing so make progress with their careers in the workplace. And then there are career coaching for people who need to decide on a career, and there are many variations of the theme. What I want to do is I want to share my screen with you so that we go through the topics in a structured way, and you can follow the discussion as we go through everything. And it also obviously helps me not to make a slip and forget some of the primary topics that we need to discuss. So let's share. I will just check with Lisette if this, Lisette, first slide, good. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if we talk about coaching in business, we actually on a very rich subject, because what happened in business over the last 5 to 10 years is that coaching has become one of the most important performance management tools for a business. This is an important comment because poor performing employees is a primary function of poor leadership and a secondary function of poor management and bad recruitment. Let's start with bad recruitment. If we recruit the wrong people into a job, we cannot expect those people to perform optimally. It's just a mismatch. But that's a topic on its own. Shadow Match deals with that on a completely different business platform that we have running for many years. Poor performance is also related to poor management. But this is something that we must actually say with a little bit of a soft voice, because managers are not always in the frame of dealing with the challenges, the performance challenges of individuals. Let me give you an example. We employ a young engineer. He's very talented in maths and in structural design and And because of his competencies at the job, we make him a manager. But he's never been trained to work with people. He's never had training on how to manage people. Now, suddenly, as an engineer, he's a manager. And managing performance management, ladies and gentlemen, is a tough job. It's very relationship sensitive. You can, if you start with active and assertive performance management, the relationship at work can become very complicated and very compromised. So some of the managers, especially those in technical jobs, in highly skilled engineering, technical and functional jobs where we need to work with objects and tasks and outcomes and projects and their mindset is not to deal with the complexities of human behavior and the challenges that these complexities that we take with us to the workplace. So the manager is not equipped for that. He's an engineer, or he's a medical doctor, or he's whatever. He's competent at a specific job, or he's a chartered accountant. He works with numbers, or he or she is a nurse or a pilot. And suddenly they have to manage people, but they've got no training, and they become managers because for some reason, they are the best amongst their peers, and senior management says that this is probably our best, let's make him a manager. And then performance management is not optimal. And then eventually, ladies and gentlemen, poor performance of a workforce is a function of poor leadership, because the leader of a business must put in place what is necessary to optimally manage the performance of the workforce as the most expensive engine of the business. The salary account of a business is, in the majority of companies, the most expensive part of their cost of running a business. Now, to leave that to chance, or to leave that to managers who are not really fully equipped on these people-related challenges that we have in the workplace, well, it's just not having a good understanding of what is necessary to make a business function optimally. I have in the left corner here, there on the slide there, I have a very interesting factor, the 20 to 40 times factor. Now, what they did, ladies and gentlemen, this was the research that was done many years ago, and it was repeated about 8-9 years ago, and they found almost exactly the same results. They said, how much energy does it take to manage a top performing individual, a top performer? How much energy does it take to keep this person on time, on target, on budget, dedicated to the task, deliver what is expected, be on time with every result, answer the questions in an intelligent and informed manner? How much energy does it take to manage such a top performing individual? And then they said, okay, how much energy does it take to manage a poor performer? So somebody that is not delivering, always late, always an excuse, always, I need to do this, I can't come to work tomorrow, I have to do this, I didn't deliver this because I was waiting for that person, and that, all excuses. The factor is times 20. So the energy times 20 to 40. So the energy that it takes to manage one top performer, that energy is times 20 to 40 more to manage average and poor performers. So the energy of a business, of the management team, can be drained by managing poor performers. And this is, if anybody who's been in a management position would say that this is actually conservative, because managing a poor performing individual in the workplace, ladies and gentlemen, is the worst nightmare of a manager and a senior executive or a leader of a business. Because there are so many complexities attached to this situation of poor performance, people underperforming and not optimally. there is something that we need to keep in mind. It's not that people can't do the job. Either they've been recruited into the wrong position, they are in the wrong place, doing the wrong job, working with the wrong people as their colleagues, reporting to the wrong management, where their behaviors are not in line with the expectation of management. It's a complicated situation. So if we look at the individual, most of the poor performing individuals in the workplace can do the job. But because of other related complexities around them, they just can't do it, and they just don't have the energy to function optimally, and eventually it becomes a performance management issue. So what do we do? The first thing, ladies and gentlemen, we will only discuss coaching as a leadership function. There are other functions of leadership as well, but we will focus on the role of the leader to provide coaching to his people and in the workplace. Let's start with poor performers. Ladies and gentlemen, all research indicates that poor performing individuals in the workplace, the majority of them can do the job. They can do it. They have the skills in most instances, or there is something seriously wrong with the recruitment process. They have the abilities, they have the level of understanding, they have the learnability, they can do it. The problem is, why don't they do it? The reasons, ladies and gentlemen, we can list the reasons, and to try and determine what the reason behind poor performance is becomes a nightmare. You can't determine what it is. It could be a personal situation at home. It could be a relationship issue. It could be a mismatch between the behaviors of the individual and fellow team members, the behavior of the individual and their manager. It could be a mismatch between the expectation of the job and their habits. It could be, we can list it. Listing the problem doesn't solve it. This is the key thing, ladies and gentlemen. If we make a list of what causes the situation, what sits behind it, we haven't resolved it. How do we resolve it? We coach them. Performance management, ladies and gentlemen, is a very, very exhausting and a tough job. It takes a lot of time from a manager to performance manage 10, 12, 15, sometimes 30 people that he or she has to manage. So what do we do? The most successful way of getting somebody in a poor performance frame of the job is to give that person a coach, a career coach. And the career coach then follows a process. And this process is to improve the job success of the individual so that the individual makes progress in the work, and that will be in the interest of the business. So it's unnecessary to try and determine what sits behind it. We start with a coaching process. And ladies and gentlemen, it happens that if the coaching process doesn't work, it ends up in a situation where that individual says, this place, this job is not for me. I need to find something better, something else, or something different. So that is, if it really doesn't work, and we've taken the individual through a coaching process, they come to the conclusion themselves, because the coaching process is designed in such a way that it challenges the person's interaction with a job all the time. And it takes the person, the individual, back to the specific job that they are doing so that they improve in doing that specific job in the workplace where they are, in the company where they work. So the answer to poor performing individuals in a business is hand them over to a coach and ask the coach to follow a process of career coaching with that individual over a period of time, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year. Spend the money and get the person up to speed, and in that help the company not to carry poor performers indefinitely. Then we come to top performers, ladies and gentlemen. Every business wants to retain their top performers. If a business doesn't have top performing individuals, ladies and gentlemen, that business is in trouble, in big trouble, because who's going to take the business to the next level and to the next phase of development and growth? The top performers must do it. Key people in the business must do it. First is there's a risk that these people can resign. How do we reduce that risk? We give that person a career coach, and immediately we reduce the risk of resignation with 50%, 50. We halve the risk immediately. If the individual has a coach, an in-career coach for that job to progress in the job that they are in, and it's been communicated to them that they are seen as one of the key people for the future of the business, and they are being assigned to a professional career coach, your risk of resignation is being reduced by 30 to 50%. I like the idea of 50% because that's the results that I found in some of the research that I did with a big company about 10 years ago. But there's another thing, ladies and gentlemen, and that is when we help these people to think about the future of their careers, the future of their job, the future of the business that they are part of, they do not only make progress with their own careers, but they build the business. It's an active building process of building the business towards a better tomorrow and a more profitable future and a more sustainable business. So how do we do this? We identify the key people in a business and we assign a coach to them, a professional career coach, to work with them for a year, for 16, 18 months, 2 years, and go through a process of building their careers in the business. Then obviously some leaders might say, but if we build their careers, what are the chances that they might resign in the process? The chances are being reduced. It doesn't increase. It's less. The chances of them to resign is less when they are being given a coach by the business to help them progress with their careers in the business. Then very closely related to this, ladies and gentlemen, a business, I've done this work for many years. And I've also always asked the business leaders, give me your succession planning map. In other words, and I've been doing this with many companies, ladies and gentlemen, we have a system that actually tests this in a company. What will happen if some of your key people cannot carry on with their jobs tomorrow or within 6 months or 8 months, or suddenly as a result of early retirement, or as a result of a resignation or a pandemic or whatever it might be? What if key people in your business suddenly, for whatever reason, cannot carry on with their jobs, or they are just being removed out of the business by whatever reason? What is your succession plan? Who takes over? In more than 70% of the companies that I have dealt with, ladies and gentlemen, they don't have a plan. They don't know. They say, maybe this person, but I don't think he or she will make it. Yeah, maybe that one. No, that person won't make it. They start peddling water. They start to struggle to find names. Now, this is a high risk for a business, ladies and gentlemen. So what we need to do is we need to identify the future leaders of a business, assign them to a coach so that they grow their careers in the business to the point where if they need to take over a more important or a more critical role in the business, that they can do it. Again, we cannot assign people to jobs if they are not ready to take that job. How do we make them ready for the job? We coach them. Experience, ladies and gentlemen, the coaching process, the shadow match coaching process is an experience-based process where the individual is being taken to the workplace by the outcomes of the process to build a career in that workplace that is optimal for the individual and the company. The following one, ladies and gentlemen, is, and I've touched on this, young managers. How do we prevent that we have the best maths teacher in a high school And then we make that maths teacher the headmaster of the school. And now we've lost our best maths teacher, and we might not have the best headmaster. How do we prevent we have the best engineer on a project, and he or she is very dedicated to the job, and suddenly there's a management position and we promote that individual to that management position, but the individual is not a manager. The individual is an operational engineer. And we can carry on with this, and it happens all the time, and it has all the negative ripple effects on the business, because now suddenly people are not being managed optimally. The performance of the top performer is being taken up by the energy of managing people, and it becomes all a gray area where the things do not work clear and in a well-formulated manner. How do we deal with it? We coach them. For young managers, ladies and gentlemen, to go onto a career coaching, a professional career coaching program is the best thing that you can do for a young manager, because suddenly that young manager understands the fact that these changes are part of career progress. And the change must be turned into an optimal success, not only in the interest of the job and the company, but also in the interest of my career as an individual who wants to make progress with my life and my career. So the best thing that we can do with young managers is to assign them to a career for a period of time so that they can grow their careers and make an optimal success of their new role as a manager, and not necessarily as a technical person or an operational individual. The next, ladies and gentlemen, is something that I am very sensitive about, and that is retrenchments. We know what the situation is with retrenchments in our world. We read every day that this company must retrench 300 people, 500, 800. We read every day in the newspaper that this part of the economy is under pressure, and with this pandemic that we just had now, a lot of companies had to go through retrenchments. It's a very, very, very negative situation. It's a very challenging situation to handle. It's not easy. It's got all kinds of emotional tags attached to it. I have a very good friend who had to close down a business during COVID. He employed about 100 people, and he said to me, "Peter, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I don't have it in me to do it." So what he did is he sold a lot of his assets to finance the salary of his people. And eventually he turned on the edge of personal bankruptcy, and the business went down in any way. So retrenchments is a reality of our modern world because it saves jobs. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, if it saves the company, then those people who stay behind are still, they still have a job. So let's say we have a situation where we have 100 people employed, but the economy changed and the trading environment changed, and suddenly in a very short period of time, the business leaders can come to the conclusion that they only have salaries for 50 people. But to save the salaries and the jobs of those 50 people, 50 must go. Now you are in a very, very, very tight situation, ladies and gentlemen, because now suddenly you have to make a call. And then it is for many companies, it's an inevitable reality that some of their people must go. So how do we do it? I think, ladies and gentlemen, if we talk about responsible leadership, if there is a retrenchment process in a business, they should assign everybody that is on the retrenchment list to a career coach, so that the career coach can take some guidance towards starting with a new job in a new environment with new opportunities. I think to give the individual a shadow match career report and 4 or 5 sessions with a career coach is for the credibility of the business and the leadership team of the business, one of the most important aspects of retrenchments, and it gives the individual an opportunity to rethink their position and their careers. And in the process, new opportunities might come to the surface, and they might become aware of some new opportunities that they could investigate. But if I had ever, and I'm so lucky that I never had to do it in my life, but if I ever have to be in a position of deciding on retrenchment, my first decision would be everyone that is on the list must be given a career coach. We rather pay for the career coach for 4 sessions so that at least we give the individual an open gate towards a possible new future in the world of work. And this for me is something that I would strongly recommend business leaders to consider. Then, ladies and gentlemen, in the workplace, it often happens that people run into personal troubles. And I don't want to list this. Just for the sake of our conversation, just a few light, very soft mention of a few examples. Somebody would lose a child as a result of a car accident, or an individual might suddenly experience serious health difficulties. And there's a lot of things that can happen to people. Relationships can become troubled. Everything. There's a lot of these things. And then people in the workplace become troubled, and we cannot expect from those people to perform optimally unless their troubles are being dealt with. My approach to this, ladies and gentlemen, is assign these people to a life coach on fulfillment, because it's clean, it's highly scientific, it works like a recipe of rebuilding somebody's life in a unique method that is unique to the habits of that individual. And it follows a process. It's a clean process of rebuilding someone's life. And we put the building blocks in place. And as these building blocks are being put in place, the individual starts to recover from the difficulties that they experience. I'm not convinced that diving into the reasons why people are in trouble solves the problem. I'm not convinced that it solves it. I've never fixed a flat tire on a car by trying to find the spot where I ran into a piece of metal or a piece of broken glass and it punctured the tire. Finding the reasons to the problem doesn't solve the problem. We solve the problem by actively rebuilding the situation. And for rebuilding it, we don't really need to know what caused it. And this is where coaching, if I come to a coach in sport and I have a very bad golf swing, it doesn't help me if he tried to determine where did I learn this bad golf swing. How will that solve the problem? We start here and we say, okay, how do we swing a golf club to hit the ball optimally? So how did we come here? It doesn't matter. Let's start with a fresh and a new approach towards the troubles and the problems that we face. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is quite a serious thing, because many people in the workplace some of them have serious struggles, and it got a very negative influence on their performance and their success in the workplace. And I think the employer has a responsibility to take some action. And by that, I'm not saying force the people into coaching. What I'm saying is offer the individuals a fulfillment coaching program. Say, whoever in the business are convinced that life could be for them a better and a more fulfilling experience, please come to us and we will assign you to a coach for a period of 8 or 10 or 12 months, so that you have a higher level or a higher index of fulfillment from life than what you have experienced up till now, or what your situation is currently. Then, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of companies sponsor their employees for further studies. an MBA degree, for instance. I have a few friends and younger friends who are currently busy with postgrad studies, and their employers pay for the cost of the study because it's in the better interest of the business to have those qualifications amongst their people. And I'm convinced that a study coach, a study method coach, especially for adults, once they've been out of university, college, or high school for a few years, we tend to lose the edge of engaging our study material optimally. A study coach, 10 programs, go through the study method, make sure that the individual has the optimal study method for their development and their learning path, and to make sure that their academic careers are successful, so that they do not spend the money their own money, or the money that the company provides as a sponsorship without success and without completing their qualification. So for employees who study, but more than this, ladies and gentlemen, we have one example of a company who said, but we would like to give all our employees with children at college, university, and high school a study report and a few sessions with a study coach to go through it. This is just a gift and just a sign of goodwill, buying goodwill amongst the people to provide this for their children. So, ladies and gentlemen, the obvious question that you will ask is, so where do we find coaches? You find them here at www.shadowmatchcoaching.com. So when we are done, I will show you this. When we are done, I will give you some opportunity to ask any questions. But I want to show you, first of all, where do we have the coaching system. Let me just, there we are. We go to www.shadowmatchcoaching.com and we click on Find a Coach. And a list of coaches, I will just quickly show you, a list of coaches will appear, and you click on the coach and you can contact that specific coach and make contact and say, I have an assignment for you to help the people in my company and in my business with a specific. You can click on any of these coaches, ladies and gentlemen, and then read about them. They all have the areas where they provide their coaching service. There's a whole list of them, and you can, there are more than on the list. These are the ones that are public on the list. So you can go to shadowmatchcoaching.com, find a coach, and then make contact. These are all highly qualified people capable of helping any business with a coaching need that they might have amongst their people. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand back to Lizette, and then we deal with any question if we have. Lizette, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. There were no questions. Maybe, yeah, there was one question which I'm going to just repeat. It was privately to me. Some of the coaches had the question, so where does the business coaching then fit into the coaching programs? So ladies and gentlemen, there's no business coaching program. So if you've seen what Peter just shared, and if you go to shadowmatchcoaching.com, there are 4 types of coaching programs. You can either do career coaching, you can do study method coaching, you can do fulfillment coaching, and you can do PDPs. So obviously you will have to assess the situation of the individual in the business. If it's somebody that if you're looking at succession planning, or somebody that's just moved into the role of a junior manager, then career coaching would be the best option to choose. If it's somebody that's just really experiencing a lot of stress in their life, or they're going through a tough time, then the fulfillment coaching would be the best option. If none of those fit, then you would look at the PDP coaching, the personal development program coaching. And then the person will complete Shadow Match, and the system will then recommend the habit that the individual needs to work on. They can obviously choose a personal development program related to their role in the business. It might be the leadership development program. It might be the conflict handling development program. So it's not business coaching as such, but you assess the situation of the individual, and that's what the business would do. And they would then contact the Shadow Match coach and say, this person needs to do career coaching or fulfillment coaching, or just personal development program coaching, where they then develop a specific habit. at a time. So that was just a comment, Peter, that I don't know if you want to comment on that. I'm going to hand to you.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain the career coaching for you in a bit of detail. It is unique to the individual and to the situation of the individual. So how do we get that right? Because the question might be, but how do you know what the situation of the individual is? Let me explain. Career coaching we have career coaching for young individuals who want to decide on what their future career must be. That's 3-4 sessions with a career coach. They should then make up their minds about their future career, what it should be, and that ends their engagement with a coach. The second one is somebody wants to change their career. In other words, I don't want to be this, I don't want to do this job anymore. I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. So they then go to a career coach to determine what are the best alternatives for them. And that is also 4-5 sessions with a career coach. Then they should have made up their minds and say, okay, I don't want to be I've got a very good example of a good friend of ours, of Lizette and I. He was a civil engineer. He qualified as a civil engineer with a master's degree in civil engineering, and he worked on a project. I think they built a bridge or a dam or something. And then after the project, 2 or 3 or 4 years into the project, he came to his wife and he said to his wife, this is it. I'm done. I'm finished. No more engineering for me. So she said to him, so what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to study medicine. Became a medical doctor, eventually qualified as a highly specialized medical professional. 14 years university training. So sometimes we get quite radical situations where people say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something different. Career coach is the answer. But then, ladies and gentlemen, the third leg is, I want to do this job and I want to stay in this company, but I want to make progress with my career. I want to grow. I want to become more of what I can be. I want to reach my optimal success. Now, let me give you an example. One of the habits that we measure with shadow match is frustration handling. So at a point, then the system comes to the frustration handling tab, and it sees that Peter de Villiers is not strong on frustration handling. Then the instruction from the system comes to Peter de Villiers and say, Peter, in your career, go find the 3 things that frustrate you most, write them down, make notes why they frustrate you, and make sure that your notes are such that you know exactly what the source of the frustration is. So I then go to my job, I find the 3 things that frustrate me most, and I make notes about them on the coaching system. What is given to my coach? My coach gets a memo and says, dear coach, Peter will bring 3 frustrations that he experiences in his current job. Discuss them very thoroughly with him, go through it in detail, and then put an action plan together to address those frustrations in a positive way so that the frustrations are minimized or they are being taken out of his way, because frustrations could hold me back. Now with a coach, we talk about this topic about frustrations in the workplace related to my workplace. The coach takes me through the process. At the end, we have an action plan, and we say, Peter, you must do this and this and this with these frustrations. When do you start with this? Tomorrow. Cool. I'll ask you in 10 days' time what your progress is. So, and this is how the system takes the individual to the specific workplace. And I can stagger the examples. So the system takes the habits of the individual, determine the intensity of the habit, and then give guidelines for that individual to go to the workplace, find these triggers to optimize their progress in their careers, discuss it with a coach, and put an action plan together back to the workplace so that they implement the action plan in the workplace. And this is how we've built the system, ladies and gentlemen. So it's always focused on the workplace of the individual against a list of activities that are based on the habits of the individual. But more than this, ladies and gentlemen, remember the system is very, very clever, because it handles a soft habit different to a strong habit and a contextual habit, and these are all technical words, are all handled differently. So there are program on program, and it doesn't follow the same pattern with everybody. It selects different habits based on the habits of the individual. So the program is not same for all. It's different for everybody, but it focuses the individual on the workplace. I hope I've answered that with enough detail. Lizette, back to you for any other questions.
Thanks, Peter. I'm just going to handle one more comment, and then I'm going to enable the setting for you guys to unmute yourself and participate in questions and answers. There was a comment that was posted to everyone. Isn't it useful to understand the background to a problem to create context? It seems odd to ignore background and simply start solving the problem. Do you want to comment?
Yeah. Lizette, there are some problems that we solve by understanding the problems, but with people and with the makeup of individuals, we must be very careful for this. Let me explain. If we understand the problem, and understanding the problem actively helps us to solve it, it's not a bad idea. It helps. But in some instances, understanding the problem doesn't solve it. In fact, it makes it more complicated. It complicates the issue. So especially when there is trauma in the history of an individual, if we ask the person to repeat the trauma by telling it to somebody, we entrench that trauma in the brain deeper, and we let the person relive the trauma, and eventually, by repeating that traumatic experience, it becomes a habit of living in the trauma. We must help people to divorce themselves from any negative history in their lives in order to build a better future. And I'm very careful about this, and I'm saying it with the biggest level, the most intense level of caretaking to the individual. I'm not convinced that to repeat what sits behind the problem is not always a good thing. We must be very careful not to try and overemphasize repetition of the trauma or the negative experience or the negative event. If it contributes to a solution, then yes. But in most instances, I'm not convinced that it does. I'm not convinced that understanding the reasons behind a negative situation solves it. I think in most instances, it aggravates it. But the coach must decide. The only thing that I want to say is that be very, very, very careful, because it could aggravate the pain that the individual experiences. My biggest success with coaching of people out of a traumatic event is when I start the coaching process and by saying, I would like you not to tell me what happened. What I want to discuss is, how do we take this forward by building a better tomorrow? What can we do now so that tomorrow will be better? What can we do tomorrow so that Friday will be better? And in doing that, we work towards a better tomorrow. And I always have a fear that we get strangled in a negative history, and it doesn't really solve, and it holds us back. We can't move forward. But that's a coaching approach. A therapy approach is different. The therapy approach is to understand and unravel the history, which I'm not convinced is always the most responsible way of dealing with people that are in trouble. And that's the take that's why I'm a coach. I'm not a therapist.
Thanks, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to now enable the setting for you to unmute yourself. I'm just going to ask that if you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute for the simple reason that the microphones are so sensitive, and if there's any movement, it picks up the movement and then it switches the faces on the recording, and that can be a little bit of a disturbance for somebody watching the recording. So if you give me a moment, and you can then just, once I've enabled the setting, you can really just start speaking or just raise your hand or your virtual hand and then go ahead. So I'll tell you now. You should be able to now unmute yourself. I have enabled that setting. Let me just check it on another screen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you should be able to unmute yourself. You're welcome to. I'm going to keep quiet and give a moment for somebody that wants to speak.
Is it just on a practical level, they can either just raise their hand virtually, or they can switch on their cameras, their video, and then just start talking. It's all the same. It doesn't seem, there don't seem to be a lot of questions. I don't see a queue, people standing in a queue to ask questions. Maybe we'll give it another minute. In the meantime, just another comment, ladies and gentlemen, on the role of the coach. If you read the training material that we provide coaches with, and the way in which we prefer from a shadow match point of view to deal with this is we try to work very hard on a meaningful future, and we try not to allow the individual into a situation where their history defines their future. We try to work towards where their character and their habits are being used to create a better future. So we don't want people to be trapped in a history that didn't really work out well for them. And in the career coaching, it's exactly the same. People can become trapped in a career that doesn't work for them, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not being fixed by a discussion. It's a process. It's a process of dedicated. I just want to see if Jan Niemand is on the screen somewhere. Have you seen him, Lizette? Jan Niemand is one of our coaches, ladies and gentlemen. He had a case study that I'm working on him now with somebody that was in deep trouble, deep trouble. And he went through the coaching process, the classic shadow match coaching process. Let's build a better tomorrow. And the individual completely recovered, complete recovery of the individual, back in the workplace, back stable, back everything and functional. It's a coaching process. To build a career is a process. It's not a discussion or a moment or one of these once-off things. It's a process. And recovering from trauma is the same. And building a life of fulfillment is the same. But with that, Lizette, back to your other questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm just going to end the recording for the sake of time. You don't have to run. Those of you that want to go, you're welcome to just drop off. The webinar is formally over. You're welcome to stay on and then still participate in questions if you don't want to ask your question whilst the recording is still going. So from my side, I'm just going to formally say thank you very much for attending. It was great seeing you, and we will be sending the recording link tomorrow morning early. Have a good afternoon, and those in the US, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.